All right, guys. Yeah, I hit record again. So welcome to this video. Now we kind of have a flow an hour in. Liz and I just did a video about an hour long. We weren't sure where it was going. We are going to share it. It kind of led us into gut health and connection to source and all kinds of crazy fun things. So if you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. Our intention is love and light, unity and oneness, benevolence for all, sovereignty, all that good stuff. And so we're just staying in flow because I think this is a really important, as Liz and I were flowing back and forth and almost she was providing this session, so to speak, at this co-creative session for me, and then I was sharing with her. So fun. I had this immense feeling in my gut, like literally, and I didn't say this in our last video, like somebody was twisting my stomach in a knot. And I'm like, why am I getting this feeling in my gut? Like, we need to go there. And then Liz was like, okay. And then I remembered that you had this whole gut healing like workshop that you had presented. So we're going to talk a little bit in flow with Liz sharing this about gut health. And I just want to start off by saying, I think this is really important. Obviously, my guides were telling me, yes, go there. Because I went through, and this is not something you and I have ever discussed really, Liz, but I went through 3 years ago. I mean, it was all about the gut. And I did a heavy metal detox and I tried everything because I really thought I had parasites. And I would do I would do healing work with others. And this kind of is a spin-off of what we talked about in the first video about the type of healing that we do. I would see little things in people's bodies, like parasites from a sea, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well too. So can we go into a little bit of flow about that, about the gut connection and the connection to source and our higher self and all of that? Because this is important.
Yeah. So this is just to give everyone a precursor on what we're going to be discussing, because your gut is your intuition. Mm-hmm. So it's truly being in alignment with all that you are, but it's also where all disease starts, all dis-ease. Yeah. So it has to do with how we process, how we digest information, what comes into our field, yeah, right? And it's supposed to be digested. Remember, we use that word not just for digesting food, but also ideas and concepts. So what our body tries to digest, and when it isn't digested, and a big emphasis on emotions here, yeah, it gets stored energetically in different parts of our body, but mostly in our gut, because it's just this place it's 30 feet or so. So it's just a very large organ. Our skin is our largest organ. So this is our second largest organ that houses all of this. Okay, so now that we mentioned that, okay, yeah. So to get more into the gut, they wanted me to share some of my own personal issues with gut. So especially going through, multiple dark nights of the soul, but through one of them in particular. Prior to that, I had a lot of physical problems. So I had 3 herniated discs, carpal tunnel syndrome, tenosynovitis, thoracic outlet syndrome, patellofemoral syndrome, sciatica. Yeah. I'm forgetting some. But then once those were eliminated, the gut was still super inflamed. So I also thought I had parasites. So I had leaky gut syndrome, lactose intolerance. I thought it was gluten intolerance, but it's not. So many of you who think you have an allergy to gluten or an allergy to a certain type of food, this is really important for you to tune into, because it's not what you think it is. Mm-hmm. Our gut is just so intuitive that when something isn't in alignment with us, meaning mentally, physically, emotionally, right, and our body tries to process it, what happens? Our cells actually attack itself, mm-hmm, to clear whatever's being stored. Yeah. Now, the issue with that is that when self attacks self, autoimmune diseases happen, right? Because it's self-attacking self. That's why it's called autoimmune, which then leads to inflammation of the body in different places, allergies, sinus issues. So everything's truly all connected, and all disease truly starts in the gut. But why is the question? So my guide Odin came in and gave me this whole, it was actually a whole webinar on and then activation and the healing, because he was saying that this is the problem for so many, going back generations to war veterans, thinking that they had to hide their emotions and storing them in, right? And then that generation teaching other generations, don't cry, crying is weak. All of a sudden, everyone has gut issues this day and age for that reason. But when we really look at the gut is our direct source with our intuition, with our higher selves. That's why children are so intuitive. They know. They just, they get belly aches and they're just like, oh, I get butterflies in my stomach, or that doesn't feel right, because they're actually in touch with their feelings, where throughout years, and I'm getting not only years, but ancestral, right? We have tuned this out and we have stopped feeling.
Yeah.
It's really getting back to this feeling directly, and I'm pointing to my gut, because that's truly where we feel.
Yeah.
And that's truly how we know we're in alignment. So Odin's coming in to stress the importance of alignment, because so many of us are intuitive and we're tapping into this intuition. But if your heart isn't aligned and your gut isn't aligned, that intuition isn't aligned.
Yeah.
So the information we're receiving is filled with doubt, because it doesn't settle within you and it doesn't resonate and vibrate in your own frequency. And then it just gets stored. And then pain happens. Pain is your body's signal of saying something is abnormal. Please look at this. So I talk to my body. I don't know how much you communicate with your body, but everything down to a little itch. I'm like, what's happening? Why are you doing that? Right? And it's this whole interaction and conversation, because I know it's coming from elsewhere, outside of myself. And this is, getting back to understanding the extent of all that we are, that I am, right? So even something like a little itch, I'm like, okay, what is this itch? I tap into the itch, and then I realize, okay, this area of my body needs some love right now. Why does this area need love? Oh, okay, because I ate something that didn't agree with me, and all of a sudden, like, my skin may be flaring up. But once you start to listen to that feeling, it doesn't have to progress into a rash. It doesn't have to progress into a physical disease or an illness. Yeah. You can catch it before it gets to that point. And then they laugh, because, as you know, my specialty is trauma. So what I do is I declutter someone's system so that they could walk in alignment of who they truly are and on their purpose and on their path. But once you have this in alignment, you don't have to continuously be decluttered.
I love that.
You're walking as like a filter system, which is what you're intended to be.
I love that you said that. Yeah.
Like, you do such a good job of knowing what resonates with you and what doesn't, right? So I commend you for that, because that's what a lot of people are craving and missing, where they're like, oh, but I read this in this book. But why did you accept it if it doesn't resonate with you? Right?
I love that you're tying that in together too. This is so fun. Okay, this is going to have to be a 2-part video, I can tell. And I'm so excited, because this is where we were going with this. And I didn't mean to cut you off, so please carry on. Well, I wanted to just tap in, because you hit a couple really, this is all important. But the fact that I remember when I first started asking my higher self, because I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Well, I'm not hearing my higher self. I'm not able to tap into it. And you said, well, you're so clear on seeing what resonates with you. I wasn't always clear. I really did. And I think a lot of, like you said, we hold a lot of emotions, and you talk about trauma. So it starts as a child. Sometimes it can start from past lifetimes, whatever you want to call it. We hold this trauma, but I love the fact that you said once you you declutter it, and once you come into that alignment, that trauma goes away. Because I just literally yesterday spoke with someone, and they had asked me about this trauma. and have I cleared it? And they answered their own question, because we have a tendency to think that we're constantly having to clear things, and we're not. I mean, I'm just kind of sharing. That's something that I think is really important for people to recognize. Like, sometimes we get in this habit of we're always having to do work and we're always having to clear, and this childhood experience. But once you kind of do that clearing and you get yourself into a higher vibration, it doesn't exist anymore. Right? It's just, it kind of what we talked about earlier in the first video, it shatters, it dissolves, it integrates. But back to that, how do you get to that process? And the gut, my yeses and nos, my yes was like up here, and my no was that, like you said, kids feel it, like my tummy doesn't feel good. You have a yucky feeling in your stomach. You have a knot in your stomach. Just like I had to talk about this beforehand. Had I have not cleared all of that, I would never have noticed that my guides were pulling on my stomach to get me to talk about it, because my stomach always felt like it was in knots and I wasn't aware of it. So I wanted to kind of go into that a little bit as well, because that's a really valid point of how to get in touch with your guidance system. And if you're always in that state of duress with your body, it's creating not only pain and inflammation, but your stomach is always almost in a battle. And so I'd love for you to just continue. I just wanted to kind of interject that. So fun.
Yeah, so no, I love how you tied everything together, because I'm also seeing this masculine and feminine play, right? Going more in the direction of divine feminine, where it's just being, right? Once you are being and you're embodying who you are, it's easier to be that filter system to allow things to come through so you can process them, rather than having to do the work, which is all masculine, right? Oh, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. Where, just getting back to just being.
I'm going to pause this just for a second. Okay, continue. I hit record.
So, back to, so why are we bringing in the masculine and feminine aspect? Because of the mitochondria. So our mitochondria, Odin is showing me, and it's funny because they depict it as like a kidney bean looking thing with like a blue squiggle in the middle. So it's kind of like going back to like the electric blue. Is what I'm seeing, and I'm just laughing about it. Our mitochondria are energy processing centers of each individual cell of our entire body. So this is essentially how we create energy and how we process energy. So everything is energy. Everything we take in has an energetic frequency. So our mitochondria are the one who are doing all of this work of essentially the filtering. And they're the ones, I'm saying they're, because I view them as like their own. At one point they were bacteria, and then they got engulfed by ourselves, or by our cells. Ourselves. Oh, that's interesting. Cells.
Yeah, right.
It became part of our cell. And now we're working symbiotically with these once upon a time bacteria, ancient bacteria, to process energy. And there's a number of different ways that energy is processed through our mitochondria, but it's so funny because when you look at the mitochondria and you look at where diet is going, intermittent fasting, right? Or ketogenic diet, it's just looking for different pathways of processing energy, because everyone intuitively knew something was going on in the gut. They just couldn't put it into a logical sense. So what they were doing was optimizing their mitochondria to process this energy, still unaware of what they were taking in and receiving. We're all just taking in and receiving a lot. But as they're being processed through the mitochondria, it's released into energy, and then that energy has to go somewhere. So if it serves us, right, we absorb the energy and we do whatever we need to with it. Now, if we don't, then it just gets stored. Right. Sort of like how we store fat. And then I'm getting fat is emotional storage. There we go. So, I can't even comprehend how connected everything is until we dive deep like this. Like the emotional being fat, Like once upon a time, I may have touched upon it for a second, but I didn't realize how much of it was truly fat. But now I'm like looking at a body and I'm like, oh, that's just emotion. So that could be released. So just stop holding on to emotion.
Yeah, which
just
is
sounds so simple,
yeah.
right? But it came from this place of recognizing and knowing. So going back to the gut and how we digest things and take things in, we're taking things in that don't align with us, or we're taking in other people's energy, and it's just getting stored. And sort of like what you said, where the body has to work very hard at fighting itself or fighting off these different energies. And it's just a distraction. It takes us away from this, from communication, because we're so busy down here.
Mm-hmm.
Or fighting these pains and these aches. And this is why they're like, healing is so important, because it takes people out of this this mental state, mm-hmm. right? It's almost like I'm getting a lot of people want to move forward, want to do certain things, but then have a setback because I feel so tired. I'm drained. I don't have a lot of energy, or, you know, I have this pain or these aches. And all of this really goes back to just the storage.
Yeah, and the trauma, like you talked about.
Yeah. That creates a break in our alignment and makes us rely on one, meaning our brain, more than the other, mm-hmm. when truly they need to be aligned and working in unison. Mm-hmm. So now I'm getting references to what it looks like to work in a place of non-alignment, and that it doesn't matter at what point in your spiritual evolution you are, you could always come from a place of misalignment when one of these things is not working correctly. So this is where you may go down a path and you're like, okay, well, this is what I was guided to do. But were you really guided to do that? Because if you felt like in your gut that it was wrong for you, but your mind was like, no, this is where we're supposed to go, are you truly in alignment? No, right? It's recognizing that you're in alignment with all three, including coming from your open heart space.
Yeah.
But your heart doesn't want to open until your gut is clear. That's what I'm being told.
Yeah, because it is the heart. It's the heart brain, it's the gut brain. It's all connecting into the brain and the nervous system, if I'm not mistaken. And what you're talking about, I think, is really important too, because what are we connecting in with is that we might think we're going here. And I want to kind of go back to just the gut, because it's also, I lost it because it was a really good, like, you were in flow and I didn't want to mess it up. But basically, when we've got that gut feeling, and like you said, we're constantly, we're in battle, and our gut might be telling us no, but our mind or the ego, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just not necessarily in full, like you said, alignment to take you into that right direction. And I wanted to share too that what I have noticed for anybody out there that's done a cleanse, that's done even something like colon therapy, hydrotherapy, and I'm not saying that these are the ways to go. I'm just saying there's a lot of different ways to go through that cleansing.
Or fasting, like a water fast.
Water fast. People will feel more of a heart opening. It's palpable, because I feel like it's a pain body. Right? It's like what Eckhart Tolle talks about. It's that pain body. Like when they're focusing in pain, they're not able to see clearly. And it also blocks that intuition.
Yeah.
And your guides,
I'm just feeling into that, because this is the translator, right? So it's like you're receiving, but if something is off, then your translation of what you're receiving is off.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Just like what we talked about in the last video of translating people's concepts of what something is. So how many times, and I know you talked about doing shadow work or going through dark night of the soul. And when you're in dark night of the soul, and let's say for me, my stomach was a mess for a lot of my life, actually. So I was in that constant state of, and this is where I was going with this. What's associated with the solar plexus? Fear, anxiety, right? So fear, I mean, granted, that's also root and survival, but we have a tendency to be that feeling of, when you're afraid of something, what's the first thing that bothers you? Usually your stomach, right?
So we're going more back into mitochondria because Odin loves it. He's just like, yes. Now we're going to talk about the stress response, right? So the stress response within the body is the fight or flight. And when the fight or flight happens, our digestion shuts down, our immune system shuts down, blood gets taken away from our brain and goes to our muscles because we're supposed to run away from danger. So fear is a good thing in a certain aspect for a short period of time to immediately take you out of a dangerous situation. It is not a place where we're supposed to live and be at.
Right.
So when we are in a constant state of stress, into the mitochondria, they have some sort of role in the stress response because they produce the energy. So they get active, right, during this time. And that's why so many people are feeling fatigued, because they get overactive because you're vibrating in a stressful state and they have to do a lot of work. And we're going to talk a little bit about Corona because it's coming through. And just a, disclosure, it doesn't take away from what's happening. It is an illness, a virus that is going around, but the real virus is the fear, because the fear weakens the immune system. So
can we back up just for a moment and talk a little bit about your background too?
Sure.
Because I think that's relevant.
Yeah. So I am a physician assistant, which means that for those of you outside of the United States, I work alongside doctors. I have the ability to diagnose psychiatric illnesses, medical diseases, and prescribe prescriptions and do surgeries and all that types of fun stuff, which was just an aspect of my healing when I fell into it. And then it led deeper into this other version of healing. So I incorporate both into everything that I do now.
I love that. I just really wanted you to interject that because as you're talking about this, I could see people going, okay, Odin. Right? And so I do think it's important, though, to kind of talk about that because this is real. It's science. And even though a lot of this information is, a lot of the information that you get coming through is channeled, there's also that element of your reality that you see it and you know it and you studied it and you interact with it. But then when you get the information coming in from your guides, which your particular guide that you work with a lot with is Odin, that information that comes through is just another layer or a multidimensional perspective building on what we already know from science. So
right.
I just wanted to touch on that also because it's not just about what the mitochondria do. It's a little bit about what this represents energetically.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of going back into what all this means and why is this important in this time right now, has to do a lot with the mass fear that we're all experiencing. It's palpable. We feel it. Those of you who feel things are empathic, like myself, physically the last few days I couldn't breathe in New York as we were declaring a state of emergency, because that's what was being cast out. And my body was trying to eliminate and filter it. It was like, that's not yours. Don't you take that in.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work for those of us that can feel it. But then for those of you who can't feel it, and I'm seeing individuals, colleagues, people that I work with that know better. For a while, we were not vibrating in fear because the coronavirus has been around for centuries.
Yeah.
We've known about this. Like, this isn't new. But it's the mass hysteria that's coming along with it. So the more people vibrate in fear, the more blood gets pulled away from their brain and they're not thinking the way they normally would think. So now I'm getting, panic text messages. Oh, this is going on. Did you see this? And constantly diffusing because it doesn't aid anyone to be in that state of fear, especially your own body, because
Yeah.
that's where stress, depression, anxiety come from. It's this chronic state of being in a stress response, the fight or flight, when you should be resting and digesting and, you know, I want to say thinking, but not thinking from a logical sense, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're talking about digesting, and because it is energy. It's like, take it all in, digest it. You don't just keep eating.
Yeah.
You know, you give it a break. And also the fight or flight response, I just want to talk about cortisol, you know, because the cortisol going up in the body, which is not the conversation topic I want to go to today, but I just want to touch on that briefly because I'm pretty sure, like, I'm kind of getting that that's a big part of this. So if that's the heart, obviously, cortisol releases. What I'm also seeing is that, and I would like for you to maybe talk about that a little bit, is when we're stressed, we're feeding bacteria in the gut that responds to stress and parasites and whatnot. And from what I understand is that they crave certain foods. We crave certain foods, such as, you know, and I know, what do I crave when I'm stressed? Ice cream, potato chips, sugar. So I'd love for you to talk briefly about that, because it's almost like the fight or flight response, it feeds itself in that frenzy. So we're feeling all that fear. And I just want to back up for a moment, because of all you empaths out there, which we're all empaths, we're all feeling it. I mean, it is palpable. It is, I walk into a place and I am like this, you know, and I know you are, and I know all of our girls are, and all of our friends that we friend, you know, it's out, it's through, and we're holding space. We're assisting in helping others digest, because we're like, we're cool. But having said that, can you talk a little bit about that cycle of feeding frenzy that starts?
Yeah. So we're going to go down that road. I just want to add that I will be giving some insight on how to boost your immune system after this, just so you guys aren't vibrating fear of not knowing what to do. Okay, so that's said and done. So yeah, so the stress response, right? It needs energy to fuel it, to attack itself. That's what you're doing. And it craves sugar because it's the easiest energy to digest and process. So carbs, chocolate.
Not that chocolate's bad.
Pure forms of sugar, like massive amounts of quality of sugar, caffeine with sugar. Yeah, you're just feeding that cycle. And then, I mean, it's still processed by the same energy processing unit, which is the mitochondria. But when you want to optimize your mitochondria, which is your immune system, right? That's when you lean more towards an alkaline diet. That's when you lean more towards leafy greens and things that will vibrate at a higher frequency and dissipate everything that's vibrating at a negative frequency, and going back to the gut and how there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, right? And the bad bacteria overgrow when you're vibrating in a bad bacteria frequency.
Right.
Like, it's just all energy, and it's just so funny to laugh about, because I've been there, and I'm like trying to get rid of the yeast and trying to get rid of, you know, candida overgrowth and all of this like leaky gut crap, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, all I had to do was change my vibration and it all disappeared. Yes. That's all I really had to do. So totally. It's laughable, it's funny, but you guys don't know how many diets and regimens and like crap I went through in order to get to this place of, oh, it really is just going within, because we are a macro of a microcosm, right? And I see ourselves as a universe, and inside there's little bacteria in my gut going, I wonder if there's any, you know, thing outside of us.
I love that.
Conversations.
It's true, because we have these little universes in there. It's our own little world. They all operate at this. It's like each organ is a planet.
Yeah.
You know?
And when you think about it, so it's like so there's, you know, you and me are in my gut right now going like, all right, like, what am I craving? And then we get the signal that they're craving something and we put it in there. but did we ever check if it was in alignment with us? No, we were just feeding whatever felt like needed to be fed.
Yeah.
So going into what's going to aid and support you during this time, oh my goodness, it's a number of things. And I've been like on flow with this and doing this religiously because this is where I've been guided to. So just to give you more of my background in, I can't even tell you what year because I don't remember, maybe 2009, I don't know, undergrad, I was doing research in some breast cancer cells, and we were working specifically on the mitochondria and what would help aid the mitochondria, because there was that little bit of science understanding that if we boosted our mitochondria, the mitochondria would kill the cancer cells. Right? So I was working with mitochondria. So it's funny, fast forward to now, I'm getting all these downloads about mitochondria, and I'm like, we're going back there? Why?
I love that.
But truly, it's the energy processing units of our body, which means all disease starts and ends there. So supporting that health, the mitochondrial health, is supporting your overall system health. So briefly, we'll touch upon a few of them just because they're coming through. Sunlight being the number one. It's called your solar plexus for a reason. They want me to show my belly shirt. So I wear belly shirts because when I'm off, I go outside and I expose my solar plexus to the sun, because that's the best way to get vitamin D. That's the best way to retrieve sunlight into our energy processing vessel, right?
I do it too.
But specifically the solar plexus, right? So just exposing it for like 20, 30 seconds a day is enough vitamin D to sustain your cells to process the energy. And then, where are we going with this? There was something else that came to mind. I just lost it. Okay, we're not supposed to go.
It's like a dream sometimes, isn't it?
I was like, yep, lost it.
Sometimes we're just, I want to just share that. Sometimes when we're getting information or when we're in flow, and I'm speaking for you, Liz, and sharing this with everybody, it literally is like so fast that the brain knows it, but all of a sudden it's gone. It's like, that's why we're always like squirrel, because it's fast, it's information, and to stay linear about it can be challenging.
Also, what's happening is that we tap into the frequencies of the people who are watching or will be watching, right? So the questions sometimes come across my brain, and sometimes it's a route that I need to address, and sometimes it's like, okay, they were able to integrate it and process it, right? So it's going back to this integration and receiving and being able to integrate is the important word, the information, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see where we're going. So the other thing is to be cautious with what you expose yourself to, right? To not give yourself more work of trying to filter and integrate and process all of this information. This is why I can't read books anymore. And like you, like I'll pick it up, I'll read 1 or 2 words, but then my body's like, you don't need to. Because you're just going to give yourself more work of trying to digest this information, and we don't need to go there right now. Like, you got what you needed to get, which was that 1 word, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it sits on my shelf until I'm called to pick up on it again. But
I love the fact that you, I'm sorry, I love the fact that you said that, because there's something that I've been guided to work with children. This is sidebar. And a lot of children that are ADD, this is a perfect example as to why they're not ADD. A lot of us that are ADD, I'm getting goosebumps. So I'm so glad that you touched on that, because we were taught to sit down and read from page 1 to page 30 in order. And that is not how it works anymore. So this is why it's so hard. It's not just all of the computers and the overstimulation. That is part of true attention deficit disorder caused by the inability to focus. That is true. There is a certain amount of truth to that. However, from another perspective, it's almost like we are so capable as supercomputers to process information from here, 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 here. So the new wave of the future is going to be having a book, 10 different books on 10 different subjects, and picking excerpts out from each one. And then our body tells us when it's time, we've had enough, we need to change subjects. I have goosebumps everywhere. So I'm so glad that I just wanted to hone in onto that a little bit, like that was an aha. And that also, I think, has to do with our diet and our food. Like, just because we've been eating one thing our entire lives does not mean that that's where we're at now. And I just wanted to kind of touch on that. So I'm sorry so back to the mitochondria.
Not at all, because this is how flow works, right? We're so in sync, and you don't even realize that part of that segment that I did about gut brain spirit connection had a lot to do with children.
Oh.
They're the ones that we're supposed to be listening to, because they're essentially, right, we see them as innocent, but they're essentially a lot cleaner than most of us are. So they're receiving and getting I should have a cucumber right now, I should have this,
right,
or I don't feel good about this, and we should be listening to them,
right,
because they're more in touch than we realize. And sort of
right,
like what you said about the reading, like, I don't need to read this whole book, because it's just not vibrating with me, it's not integrating, like, I don't need to.
Yeah, so so sometimes it's about finding what is in alignment with what they are ready to absorb. And then when they've absorbed it, they can just move on to something different and come back to that later. And that's kind of how the body works with food and everything else too. But so I wanted to touch on that briefly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm getting just like muscle testing for yourself, checking and feeling it. Am I supposed to eat this right now? Is this good for me? Right? Having that, so he's kind of making it seem like it feels like extra work for some people, so he's addressing that. But it's really not, because when you're already in that place of just flow, you know what aligns with you. This is just getting you back into that habit and that state of staying in alignment, of going, okay, does this resonate with me? Yes, okay, I could eat it, right? Or should I watch this movie right now? No, right? And it's this day and age of just constant exposure to things energetically, because we want to consume, but we're not processing. So it's just being stored. It's causing so much mayhem internally. That right now the time is to almost like retreat and disconnect. And, in a way, the coronavirus is bringing this to our attention, because we're physically seeing how fear vibrates, right? So we know the impact that it's having internally. So now we could be a little more cautious when it comes to exposing ourselves to negative media, to, a movie that doesn't vibrate with us, or reading a book that we feel we have to integrate, but energetically we don't agree with the things that are being said in that book. And forcing something that's not in alignment with you is the opposite of flow. It is the opposite of you being in your true essence and walking in your path. So if you have all these roadblocks, it's you that are putting them in front of you by forcing yourself down this road. Kind of going back to what you said, Carrie, about how it looks like to channel, or how people think it's supposed to be. It's having this expectation of where you think you're going and forcing yourself to go down this route. I'm getting, forcing children to become doctors and become lawyers and, follow this path.
Right.
It's not in alignment with who they are, and they're just doing it because of guilt and duty and obligation, and that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But it's out of alignment.
Yeah. Force feeding.
Yeah.
Literally. I love this. I think we could go on for so long. We're going to have to end on this particular note. And so that was a few tips. I love that. So muscle testing, the sunshine, paying attention to what your body's telling you. If you can find that, you'll get that feeling of constriction. I think is a good feeling. Like if you're not supposed to do it, you'll feel constricted. You might feel a tightness around the throat, a pull in the gut, a pushing, almost like your body shrinking in on itself, like, no, don't put that in me, I think is one one way. And then also, maybe a couple of other things.
Alkaline water, alkaline diet.
That's right.
Can if it resonates with you. Personally, that's what I take. It's just mitochondrial support. And then the last one is actually cold exposure for 20 to 30 seconds, similar to the sun exposure.
Yeah.
Kind of like wakes up the cells. Yeah. So like, you know, a cold shower, run the cold shower before you start your hot shower, you know, something to those lines like that.
Yeah, I love that. Is that a particular order or does it really matter?
So they're saying they want your body temperature to get down to a certain degree. So they're saying before you do hot water, right? Because if you do it afterwards, then it'll take longer. So they're just saying like cold exposure, and then they're talking about what I do. So back when it was a little colder in New York, I would go outside and like very, very limited clothing in like the winter, freeze my butt off for 20 seconds, then jump into a hot bath.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, so you could replicate it by just running a cold shower and then switching it to hot once you're ready cold.
Yeah, I like that. That's fun. And it's stimulating for the senses.
Yeah.
It helps to like, you know how a lot of people, again, that desensitize, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, a lot of people, when they have a lot of gut things going on, you really are, and speaking from experience, I don't know if you can agree with me on this, Liz, but you feel desensitized. It's a feeling of being out of touch, and it does feel like a blanket is blanketing your senses. And so I could see how that could be a really powerful tool to wake up those senses a little bit and make you more aware of what your body is telling you. So I love that little.
I love that spiritual tie to it.
Yeah. So I think you what?
I said there really are one and the same, right? The physical and the spiritual. So.
Oh, right. And this is obviously what we've been taught for years outside of Western culture, but we're coming back to that.
Yeah.
So I think it's safe to say we'll do another chapter to this and many more, like so many things. Like I think we're probably going to do some toning and some light language and channeling at some point. We might do some, because it's all connected, and we'll do a little bit, but I'd love to go more on this gut, particular brain, heart, cortisol. I mean, so your thing is mitochondria, mine's fascia, you know, and it's as a physician's assistant, I teach yoga and Pilates. So it's, of course, and I see that connection. It's really awesome. And I love to play with that. So we will definitely continue. I'm going to just kind of, I'll share below on the comments and the information, Liz's website and information, and that workshop. Maybe do you have it recorded so people can go check it out if they want to?
We'll be doing a second segment. So.
Okay. So that'll give people an opportunity. Okay, cool, to jump in on that, and then we'll do another video, and I think we'll be a little bit more prepared for in the next one. So this was perfect, though. Just what I think just was what was needed for today.
Yeah.
So thank you, Liz. Turning you up. I didn't end yet. I just turned you up a little bit. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just expressing so much gratitude to Odin and all the angels that came forth today, and to you for inviting me onto this segment.
Oh, this was so much fun. So thank you to everybody tuning in, because we do really, this is our bliss. And when we create bliss, we implode. When we implode, we create activations, and our DNA expands, and our auric field expands, and our heart, opens, and it literally is what it's all about. So whatever we can do to assist others in that journey is what we're doing. So I'm grateful for this experience. So I'm going to end on that note. Much love and light. You can hang out just for a second, Liz, if you wouldn't mind. I'm just going to hit end.